Episode 86 of the Fire Coaches podcast. We have Kyle Morgan on here, who I connected with, I want to say a couple months ago, just using the old internet that we have in today's world with connecting with people and whatnot. So Kyle ran cross country at Arizona State, finished his degree, at Ohio State, where he's from originally in the Ohio area. But then he got into the scouting side of football, was at Arizona State. He's been a firefighter for almost 20 years and recently started the JUCO Insider Report. So really get excited to kind of hear Kyle's story. He's also worked at the combine and done some stuff with Catapult as well. So Kyle, thanks for taking some time to sit down.
Yeah, I appreciate you reaching out and talking not only football, but just kind of life's journey and however it looks. Everybody's got their own journey. I appreciate
Yeah,
you taking the time with me.
no doubt. Yeah. So I guess go back to yesteryear. Like I was saying, obviously you're running at Arizona State. You transfer back home to finish at Ohio State. Where does the football side of things come in? Like, where did that interest start for you? And obviously, down the road, you start going through the Scouting Academy, which is still around online, where you can kind of take courses for a variety of different things to kind of see the backside of college football or college football and the NFL. But how did that all start for you?
For me, obviously growing up in Ohio, the football mecca is the Ohio State University. So just being able to attend as many games as possible, home and away. And back then you could attend practices, and Coach Tressel did a cool thing where he did a kick scrimmage every fall camp. And so I remember, attending that, and that was in the shoe. Every play is kick. Logistically, a lot of things I don't think would fly today, but really just, anytime there's a football in the air, I wanted to be around it and see it. So as far as after Ohio State, really just getting involved in understanding more of the game and how, the scouting side of it. It's funny, I look back on it and I really owe my wife, kind of going down this career path. We were just watching the game and the announcers are going on about the running back breaking a long run, and I was like, "No, the did you see the block guard made?" Like
There's more to it.
that person made the play, and she's like, "You watch football different than me." I said, "Yeah, I don't watch the ball. I'm watching the game within the game and the matchups and kind of why the play worked the way it did." So from there, I wanted that kind of sparked interest in me. And so I wanted to kind of dive into really the nuances of evaluation and football and that sort of stuff. And so I did some research and found the Scouting Academy and reached out to Dan Hatman and had a great time doing that. As a great resource and really learned the ins and outs of the evaluation process, watching the film, but more importantly, writing up the report the correct way. And that was probably the most fun of it, just kind of putting your thoughts on paper correctly from snap to finish, that sort of stuff. So yeah, Sky Academy couldn't be more thrilled to be a part of it. And Dan is still, fighting for me in rooms I'm not in, and it's been 10 years since I've given him, you know, my time and my money to his resource. He's still supporting me and recommending me for roles and jobs and interviews, and I can't recommend it enough to anybody else that might be thinking about that.
No, that's interesting. I've emailed with Dan probably 3 or 4 times. I've never actually, had a conversation with him. I always wanted to take the college recruiting course, which is usually around the NFL draft time. And for some reason, I always have an excuse why I haven't taken it. So I do want to get into it. And, I love hearing that, somebody who goes through it, right? Because I think there's certain things that people have of thoughts on the outside of things that anybody does, right? But to actually hear somebody who went through it and is like, hey, Dan still like, brings up my name or whatever opportunities, like you said, it's been 10 years. Like, that's crazy, right? That's the true mark of a person, where it's not just like, right? Because there's so many things I think nowadays where it's like, oh, give us your money, we'll give you an experience, we'll educate you, yada yada yada. But then to actually like give it back, maybe even more than you gave, right? Like, that's awesome.
It's unheard of, and Dan is a rare human, and I tell him that every time I see him, that I owe a lot to him, and couldn't thank him enough.
So where did, kind of take me through, obviously you're talking about Ohio State and the interest in football there and Coach Tressel. And then in between the scouting academy, like where does that continue to take to that level where you're like, okay, I'm going to sign up for this and I want to dive more into this? Like, obviously, you said, obviously, you're watching football and you see it from a different lens, but were there moments where you're like, I just need to go and dig deeper or go further with this?
Yeah, you know, at the end of the day, it came down to you can talk about it or you can be about it, and it was time to just put my money where my mouth is and dive in, and I'm glad I did because I met some really good humans in the space that we continue to, talk and share philosophies to this day. Not just Dan, but, others that were in the course along the way and kind of that whole alumni group that has kind of stemmed from the Scouting Academy. So, yeah, yeah, there's a film evaluation course, there's a college recruiting course, there's an area scout course. So I wanted all of it. And so, I kind of dove in and was fortunate to work with John Peterson there in the area scout course and attend games at Arizona State in the role of an NFL scout, so you're pregame on the field, taking your notes there, and then you're going up, you're sitting in the press box, with
You're doing the
scouts,
deal.
and you're doing it, and then you're submitting your reports and getting feedback, and it was a great experience, and once you're bitten, it's over, and that now you can't get enough of it.
Yeah, so coming out of there, obviously, you work at Arizona State for I believe it was 2 years. Obviously, you're in Arizona. So was it just kind of natural that there was an opportunity there, or were there things elsewhere that you're like, well, I just don't know in terms of having a family and distance and all that? Or was it just like, hey, this just popped up at ASU and this is going to work out well?
It's funny, is actually a conversation with Dan Hatman. He's like, look, you got to be in a team, like let's get a plan together, and what do you think, family wise, time wise, that sort of stuff. And I'm like, let's do it, let's see where we can take this. And so yeah, getting involved in there with Arizona State, I just showed up one day unannounced, no no predetermined meeting with the director of player personnel or the staff there.
No resume,
I
just
just
nothing,
showed
just
up.
like, hey, I'm coming.
I had one of those big, like, cardboard travelers of Starbucks coffee. It was like 60 ounces of coffee and 2 dozen bagels, and I just showed up ready to, like, "Can I talk to someone?"
Yeah. Yeah.
And, hey, man, I got to the parking lot, walk up to the door, I'm confident, I'm feeling really good, pull on the door to walk in, it's locked. I'm like, "Okay, now what?" And so I walk back to the car, and I'm sitting in my car for, like, an hour. Finally, somebody walks up, unlocks the door. I give them like 20 minutes to get settled, and then I make my way up and finally talk to the woman working the desk there, and she's like, "Well, Coach is Al Luganbill's director of player personnel there. He's like, he's not going to be until like 10." It was, and I didn't know any better at the time. It's early June. There's camps and 7-on-7s and passing leagues going on at the time. So the staff came in later because they were going to be, on
Around
campus
later.
until later. So they started their day later. I didn't know that. So yeah, long story short, I ended up spending about 3 hours in that parking lot waiting to talk to somebody. And anyways, finally got a sit down with Al Luganbill, and 20 minutes later, I got a volunteer role, and I couldn't be more excited, just to be in it, even at the lowest level as far as, the pecking order goes. So learned a ton, had some regrets along the way, just kind of didn't spend enough time with certain people that I should have. And one of them being Marvin Lewis was on staff then. And so I was able to, my second year there, I was able to start working on advances for our opponents. And that's one of my regrets, is not sitting next to him in his office, just putting his brain on schemes and film and all that. So, but it was a great experience, and a lot of good people in that building at that time.
Yeah, so Herman Edwards was there, as a head coach at the time. You come in and, like you said, obviously lowest in the pecking order, but also you're at a P4 too, right? So it's like, in some ways you're really involved there. Did you have any thoughts when you're in that parking lot for 3 hours before you walked in, like maybe I should just leave, or was it just like, no, I'm putting my heels in and here we are.
No, no, I don't want to do anything else. Why would I leave? I'm this
Yeah,
close. I'm
right.
I'm literally outside the front gate. Let's roll.
Yeah.
So I would have waited there all day.
So what did you learn? What did you take away in those 2 years of working at Arizona State? Like, obviously, again, you go through the scouting academy, you learn a lot of things. You're already really interested prior to that. Like, what did you take away that were just kind of eye-opening things that you saw from again, because I remember when Herman Edwards came into Arizona State, it was all about bringing an NFL model to the college game, and that was well before. I shouldn't say well before, but just as portal starting, well before NIL. But it was this whole like we're going to structure this in terms of like an NFL style type thing. So what did you all learn there?
Yeah, really just the process of the whole operation. I was working basically through an arms worksheet where we'd get a huge data dump of players and positions and divide it up by a position group, and then at my level of the eval process was just, can you play or not?
Sure.
Based on different parameters that that position coach set forth. So it's really just a yes, no, move on. Then you've got a higher level eval from there. Eventually it works its way up to the coordinator. So really just understanding that process, seeing all the different layers of it from the inside. And then, game day ops and visits and, just seeing how that whole recruiting cycle works from initial outreach from the staff to now they're in your building. Now I'm giving them a tour, that sort of stuff, to game day visits to, just finding ways to add value along the way too. I think that was the biggest eye opener too, is that a lot of time we could focus on everybody wants to be the guy, right? The decision maker, that sort of thing. And I had those thoughts too. You want to have a bigger role, but just to carve out any possible niche you could, and then ultimately to get paid in responsibility in some capacity was like the ultimate.
Yeah. Well, I just remember the amount of guys that came through there, which we were kind of talking about off air, but just the Jaden Daniels, the Ricky Pearsalls, Benjamins, Rashad Whites. I mean, the amount of guys that came through that tenure, or not the tenure, but that time that Coach Edwards was there. I
Yeah,
mean, the talent was unbelievable, and I know I'm missing like 4 or 5 other guys that everybody would obviously know as household names.
sure. Yeah, yeah. It was a great time, and it was a good 2 years to be a part of it. And then COVID came along, and things changed. The world changed, and we just had to adapt. And I was fortunate that from then, through prior relationships and kind of own work ethic and that, I was kind of introduced to other opportunities. So it worked out for me as well.
Yeah. So after that, you had obviously talking about COVID, and obviously you said things changed at that point. Then you made the move to work at Catapult for a while, right? Just kind of talk about like Catapult for people who maybe don't understand that from the basketball standpoint or just other sports outside of football.
Yeah, yeah. It's Catapult currently. At the time, it was Exos. XOS was the company, and basically we were using them at Arizona State just to get large data dumps to run it through our compliance software and that sort of stuff. So it's just a huge database of prospects to filter through. And so they had a role come open on the West Coast, and Coach Luganville asked me if I'd be interested, and I was like, yeah, and sounds great. It's scouting. It's
Keeps you
kind
involved,
of,
right? Yeah.
yeah, you're kind of teetering on that area scout model, or at least that mindset. And yeah, it was fun. So I had the West Coast, and it was a weird time, I will say, because California was playing football that fall. And so, when they initially offered me the job, that was like April. I said, "Yeah, could you give me a week, just to kind of I'll get back to you in a few days and kind of go from there." And by the time I called them back, they're like, we're on a hiring freeze." And so it's like, maybe I messed that one up too. I don't know. But anyway, so that was, it wasn't until July that officially I came on board with Exos, and then Catapult purchased them. Catapult's a large entity. A lot of people know them from the wearables and the GPS stuff. A
Yep.
lot of basketball, soccer. If you're watching the World Cup, somebody's wearing a GPS tracker. So yeah, we were just kind of a scouting arm for that, and providing data for many colleges. At the
And were
time.
you
So
Were you just watching film or were you out at events like 7-on-7s and camps and things like that as well?
Yeah, it was practice, sevens, camps, anywhere there's a football, I want to be around. So I really enjoyed it. It was, again, if you could treat it like that area scout mindset where you're getting eyes on a person, not just for the football, but for the body type. Can they grow into their frame? Because we're talking about high school kids, so their growth potential is so different than if you're looking at like a college or NFL player. So really, just kind of projecting that. And then what I really enjoyed, and it wasn't part of the job description, was speaking to high school football teams and their booster clubs and educating them on the recruiting process.
Which is really
If I
needed
could say it,
even in today's world is really needed. I mean, honestly.
yeah, yeah. There's a lot of scams out there, and so if I could educate them on what's actually going to move the needle for their hopes and dreams, and playing sports at the collegiate level, and I'd be brutally honest with them, the good, the bad, the games that go on from a staff standpoint to a recruit, from the game that the recruit then has to play, that sort of stuff, just kind of shining light on the process. And because it's a big decision and there can be a lot of money wasted.
Right.
And if I could prevent that, but I had a blast doing that. And again, that wasn't part of the gig.
Yeah.
That was just me wanting to maybe use my platform to educate and in turn, great relationships. They're more willing to send me prospect lists. I'm excited to go to their practice in the spring or their showcase or that sort of thing and say, I remember that. I
Right.
told you. And there have been some great stories that have come from those events. They're gosh, it seemed to always be the kids that hung around afterwards, asking really good questions. And we get into some really good conversation with him and their parents, and then to look back now and see them at the combine. This past cycle, I got one of those players that I sat on a high school stage with afterwards and told him it's going to happen. Just be patient, work your plan, work your process. And to see him, get drafted was awesome. There's another one that's coming this cycle. So
Very cool.
uh, that part's really fulfilling to see it all the way through
Yeah.
from recruit to college career to then now the NFL
Yeah. Well,
process.
well, speak of that, because you worked, it was the last two combines, correct?
Yeah.
Just talk
Yep.
about kind of your involvement there in Indy and what you all kind of did.
Yeah. Just part of the event ops staff, for lack of better term. They've got a relatively small office there with NFS, and obviously it's a huge event, a lot of moving parts, and what you see on TV is maybe 3 or 4 days, but we're there for 8, 9, 10 days in the hotel with players. There's no other people staying at the hotel, no family members, no agents, nothing. It's the players and it's us.
Sure.
And it's awesome because you're in it. You're seeing them as, you know, people, like obviously they're really good at football, but now you're seeing their personalities come out. That part's really cool. So, but really just, any way to add value. That's what, that's what we're there for. And that's what when it's setting up massage chairs for their rehab area in the convention center, or, the last 2 years, I've been involved in the gear drop. So you're all the gear that they're given that week and setting up their beds. It's kind of brings it back to like the official visit vibe of, you're setting up their hotel room looking good for when they show up. So, and then anything that pops up, good or bad, along the way, I try to be there and take some of that off their plate.
Nice.
Uh, you know, Audrey and Jeff and Sam and John, that they're just swamped, that week and stressed to the max. And so if we could just kind of take some bullets for them, any way we can, I think goes a long way. So, and it's funny, if you just keep showing up and keep being available, and really good things come your way. And so the last 2 years I've ended up on the field during the position drills as basically a glorified get back coach. Like you've got the player in the drill, and then you've got all the TV communication going on and camera angles and all that stuff. And so there's bullpen kind of stuff just off to the side, and I just got to be that bad guy. Like, hey, not personal, but you guys behind the cones, you're gonna mess up the film because all the teams have access to those angles too, and we don't want to muddy up any of those angles as well. So it's pretty cool. It's like Disneyland, for draft nerds like me, and to be in it that deeply. I just can't wait again for next year.
Well, it's interesting because to me, it seems like you're a firefighter in Indianapolis while you're actually a firefighter in Arizona, right? You're kind of helping with all this different types of stuff at the combine where, right, wherever it's kind of needed,
Yeah,
like you're going to go. And so, talk about that where you've been a firefighter for almost 20 years and obviously you got a growing family, but then you have this itch for football as well too. So it's like you got these different things going on, and just talk about what you've even learned of. I don't know if there's anything you can carry over from the firefighting world into football, but just being a firefighter for 20 years and what you've kind of learned along that journey.
I've learned that I really want to work football full time. That's just the thing that won't go away.
Yeah,
Every day for 20 years, it's like, gosh, this is what I want to do. This is what I want to do. And age is not on my side, right? In the scouting world, so I'll always fight that battle. But to me, that's a battle worth fighting. And help out anywhere I can, show you anywhere I can. But guess what? Maybe can take over from fire service to scouting is really just that ability to maintain level head. That it's whatever's going bad. I've seen worse,
right.
and this isn't actually that bad. And
Yeah,
and if we have this ability to just kind of keep our blood pressure and our heart rate calm and steady no matter what's going on. And if I could take that to a football club, that's just kind of inherent in me now. And then just I guess the protocol side of things in the scouting world is just kind of working your process through. And so I guess that translates as well.
no, that's interesting because I
I
think
guess.
I think that there's a lot. Like I love what you said there with the level headedness, right? Because you're like you can go to any type of football situation, whether it's combine, whether it's helping a program, whatever, right? And somebody's worst nightmare or biggest stress might be something to you that you're like, actually, this is like, having a hangnail. Like we're gonna get through this, right? Like it's gonna be okay.
We'll be okay.
Yeah,
Adapt and overcome is how we say it. So
right,
yeah, adapt and overcome. You'll be fine. The worst tragedies going on in the world right now than
right.
whatever it is that might be stressed about at that time. And I always tell people that in any chance I can get, and I try to make sure to say it in their most stressed times is, can you believe you get to do this? And through my son's process of, coaching and scouting and that, and a lot on your plate as a EPP at the FCS level, just lack of sleep and all that stuff. And I just say, can you believe you get to do this?
Right.
Look, it is pretty cool, and then that kind of steps you back like, all right, we're good,
Yeah.
so anybody that I pass that on to, like, no matter your toughest moment, your most stressed, your kids won't go to bed or they're up too early or whatever you think is that tragedy in the moment. To do this,
Right.
like this is okay. This is good.
Yeah. Well, talk about your most recent venture with the JUCO Insider Report and how that all kind of came about, and what you're trying to do there. Obviously, helping junior college prospects probably get to a 4-year level, but just kind of talk about how that all started for you.
Yeah. I don't know how far back we should go, but I've always had this kind of creative itch of I just want to kind of create programs and processes and whatever bottleneck might be affecting you. I'm pretty good at coming up with a solution for, and really gotten into the AI world, I guess, over the last 6 or 8 months, and kind of use some tools there to create some programs, and actually create a program for Catapult at the time, and they really liked it, and then they didn't like it that I was spending too much time creating, and so that was kind of an alarm bell that went off in my head, like, okay, I want to be creative. I want to adapt to the changing landscape of college football. the transfer portal, the NIL, all this stuff, like it's moving at a different speed.
Yeah.
And whatever it is we were doing, it just felt archaic. And it was clear to me that there's never going to be adaption, like there's never going to be this creative process
Like a
for me
growth,
to,
Yeah. Yeah.
as an outlet. Yeah. And so, I just kept creating and finally decided, you know what, it's time to step out and kind of do my own thing. And so we've got over 50 years of collective experience, me and my partners, between front office, coaching, scouting. And, if we're able to put that experience and that knowledge to solve, that GM, that director of player personnel, that coach, the bottlenecks that they have as far as identifying prospects, along with all the other stuff that they have to do, right? And so, working as a support staffer, I I want to help the support staff. And by doing that is, all right, let's set you up on second base and make you feel like you hit a double. Okay? You determine who and when and how to bring that person home, but here you go. We're going to streamline this, make this easy for you, and I'm super excited about the product we built and pretty quickly become kind of, we're making noise in the evaluation personnel space, and that's exciting.
Do you
And
think, not to cut you off, but do you think that you've made more progress quicker than you thought you would?
100%,
Yeah,
100%. I'm 9 months ahead of my plan,
sure. No, that's awesome.
and
I think that there's something to be said for people like yourself who were in a staffer role and can kind of see forward, right? Because I think that there's so many I mean, I shouldn't say that's, again, it's not black and white, but I do think there are a lot of coaches that struggle to see, because again, might be delegation thing. Maybe they're just not up on the new trends or whatever. It's hard for them to kind of think of ideas or even share that with people and brainstorm because coaches don't have time in today's world. Like you said, ever changing landscape. Like they're not worried about little processes, but these processes, if they could be fixed and elevated, like, hey, I did hit a double without even doing anything. Like, well, holy cow! Like now we've just taken somebody who used to manually do this that took 2 weeks to do that or whatever, right? I mean, there's so many efficiencies that I think can be helped that way.
and then within what we've built, we've also created other tools like a toolbox, and not everybody's got the resources. There's the haves and the have-nots, and so really my mission in all this is to make this affordable for literally every 4-year program. So it doesn't matter your vision, your logo,
Yeah.
whatever. And there's other products that kind of model that way, and well, this is an elite program, they got some money, whatever. Like it shouldn't be like that to me in
Right.
my mind. And so I've really focused on the have-nots, the people that can't hire, can't afford unlimited GAs, analysts
Yeah.
that you see on some rosters. So if we can create processes and systems in place to kind of, again, take some of that off their plate, free up some of their time because they're running here, there, and everywhere as well. And so really it's not just a junior college football database. There's also a toolbox in there as well. Help with their travel, their spring visit cycle. What else do I have in there? There's a couple other things not announced yet, but
And don't be
it's been
breaking any
fun.
news here. Don't be breaking any news here.
Well, maybe, but
No. Actually, well, and the episode
what?
that is going to be dropped right before this, Chris Reiner, who actually was at Arizona State as a coach, he's now out of it. But they have it's not an AI. It looks like an AI thing. But again, it's another way for coaches to input their information on from a scouting standpoint, from previous games to just get formulas. And there's so many things out there. I feel like that again, can be helpful, right? And to your thing, like the toolbox is like sometimes I think there's things that people just either don't know how to create or don't have the time to create. That hey, if I could just go pay this and like you said, let's just make it affordable, right? Like all of a sudden it's like, oh my gosh, that just solved all my problems. I'm a Division 3 coach and I'm the only full time person on staff, but now that we can do this, I mean, this is just expedited things. There's just all these things that I think like you're spot on. It's to help those people that don't have the resources.
Yeah, everybody's got a bottleneck at some stage of their daily struggles, right?
Yeah.
And if we could just kind of help alleviate that, that's kind of my mission here. And so for that coach to then say, "What about this? What about that?" And I tell people, if you can dream it, we can do it. So let's roll.
Yeah. So is that,
And so we kind of be that concierge to them as well, and
yeah.
and cater to their needs.
So I would, obviously when we finish up here, I always ask, how you get better. Is that kind of your thing? Like you mentioned, like being creative and figuring out kind of solutions to processes. I mean, you mentioned AI, which obviously is every day. I feel like I'm such a loser because I haven't used Claude yet. So at least the way that the Twitter algorithm's yelling at me. But is there
Right.
anything that you do outside of AI and creative process type stuff that gets you better? Or is that really like, hey, if I can take a problem here from the football world or the firefighting world, wherever it is, and I can figure out a fix to this, is that kind of what gets your juices flowing?
100%.
Yeah.
100%. And to sit down and meet with the chiefs with our own fire organization and help them build ways to save money, which we can then maybe buy more equipment or hire more or whatever, right? But at least you've got that option. Yeah, so that's kind of been working, you know, helping football coaches again, just find a ways to put them on second. Let's keep being efficient and productive. And but yeah, 100%. That's kind of, to put it mildly, gets me up every day, and
Yeah.
because it's never ending, and truly, like if you can dream it up, find a way to create it, because it's going to make your life more efficient, easier, free up time to do other things, whatever. So yeah,
No, and
yeah,
like you mentioned,
just keep learning.
everyone's got a bottleneck, like you mentioned, right? Like that's if I could label this podcast, it'd be like, everybody has a bottleneck. It's true. I mean, it's when you figure things out and you get streamlined, right? That's where, and I love process and fixing things. And, there's a point where you can't get so bogged down that you're not making any production. But it's also like, well, once even when you put a process in place that fixes things, like that can still be taken another step further, right? Like there's phase one and phase two and phase three. So I think that's spot on. I think sometimes, people just, maybe try to downplay things or just, firefight and just put their head through and we're going to get through this. But it's also like sometimes you got to step back and be like, hey, is there somebody out there who's doing this in the space or somebody we can reach out to that's like, hey, here's my issue. I just need a couple solutions, whether that's in a Google Sheet, whether that's in my email, a calendar, an AI tool, whatever.
Yeah, and to have the mindset of like, well, that's the way we've always done things. Like we got to get past that.
Yeah.
The world is changing so quickly, and it's not stopping anytime soon. And there's going to be more and more tools and that coming available. So start learning it. Start diving into creating, whatever those bottlenecks are, to just kind of find ways to play around and try to ease some of those things. And that's not going to be easy. People think AI is, yeah, I'm just going to push a button and life is just going to be smooth and, on cruise control. There's got to be a human element to it, and that's just for the quality control of it. And so create ways to help efficiency, but the quality should never go from your own eye, your own mind, that sort of stuff. And so I think people need to be careful that AI is not just in lieu of,
Yeah.
doing work.
Yep.
There's still work to do.
Right.
Now there's just the barrier of entry is now easier, and we've never been able to create the things we can in the history of the world. And so dive in, learn it, and create whatever gets you up in the morning, just
Right.
dive in and see where it takes you. So it's been fun. I don't regret for a second stepping away from previous role. If anything, I think it just kind of further emphasized my drive and kind of what makes me tick.
Yeah.
And then to get the positive feedback of like, wait a second, so you can do this and you can scout. I feel like the only thing I'm missing is being 25 again. But for anybody watching this is 25 and can do these things, like, man, I envy the young right now.
Right. I just hit my 4-0, so I'm not getting any younger either. So I completely get it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, Kyle, I appreciate you jumping on the podcast, sharing your story, and obviously look forward to kind of following the JUCO Insider Report and seeing all the success that you have with that.
Well, thank you so much for having me on and just kind of talking life, and kind of where it takes us. So thank you so much, everything you do too for the community.